I found someone worth my time. My name is Michael. I'm 38 years old, and I've been married for 15 years. My wife, Sarah, was crying at the funeral, or so I thought, but when her phone rang, I caught her smiling. 2 hours later, when I discovered that $340,000 of my inheritance had vanished, I finally understood what she was really smiling about. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how sometimes the dead can still protect the living. My father, Robert Brennan, died on a Tuesday in March. Lung cancer took him in 4 months, which was merciful in a way. He was 72, a retired electrician who'd worked construction his whole life, saved every penny, and never trusted banks completely. The last thing he said to me in the hospital was cryptic. "Michael, the real money isn't where she thinks it is. Remember the workshop." I thought he was delirious from the morphine. Sarah seemed devastated. She'd been with me through Dad's entire illness, driving to the hospital, bringing him magazines, holding my hand during the difficult conversations with doctors. At the funeral, she stood beside me in her black dress, tears streaming down her face as they lowered his casket. I was grateful to have her support. That's when her phone rang. She stepped away from the graveside, and I watched her face transform. The tears stopped. Her mouth curved into a smile. She was trying to hide it, but I saw it clearly. She was happy about something. Really happy. "Who was that?" I asked when she returned. "Just work," she said, slipping her phone back into her purse. "Sorry, I should have turned it off." Work. Sarah managed a small accounting firm downtown. She'd worked there for 8 years, ever since we moved to Portland. I'd never seen her smile like that about work before. After the funeral, we went to my father's house to start sorting through his things. Sarah was unusually eager to help, especially when it came to paperwork. She found his will first, read it carefully, then handed it to me with what looked like satisfaction. "He left you everything," she said. "The house, the bank accounts, even his truck." I nodded, still numb from grief. Dad had been a simple man with simple assets. The house was worth maybe $180,000. His savings account had about $160,000, and there were some bonds and certificates of deposit. All told, around $340,000. Not a fortune, but enough to pay off our mortgage and maybe take a real vacation for the first time in years. "We should go to the bank tomorrow," Sarah said. "Get the accounts transferred over." I agreed. Sarah was always better with financial paperwork than I was. She'd handled our taxes, our mortgage, our insurance. It made sense for her to help with this too. The next morning, Sarah was up early, dressed in her best business suit. "I'll go to the bank around 10, she said. "You don't need to come. I have all the paperwork, and I know you're not ready to deal with all that yet." She was right. The thought of sitting in a bank office, talking about Dad's death in terms of account numbers and transfer forms, made me sick. I let her go alone. That was my first mistake. I spent the day at Dad's house, going through his workshop in the garage. He'd been an electrician for 40 years, and his workshop was immaculate. Every tool had its place, every wire sorted by gauge and color. I was looking for something to keep, some memento that would remind me of him. That's when I found the safe. It was built into the floor, hidden under a removable section of workbench. I almost missed it entirely, but one of the floorboards felt loose under my foot. When I pried it up, there was a small digital safe, about the size of a shoebox. I tried Dad's birthday as a combination. Nothing. I tried my birthday. Nothing. Then I remembered something. When I was a kid, Dad always said his lucky number was 1947, the year he was born. I entered 1-9-4-7. The safe opened. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. Stock certificates, bonds, and bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed. The most recent statement showed a balance of $830,000. $830,000. I sat on the garage floor, staring at the papers, trying to process what I was seeing. Dad had been living like a working-class retiree, driving a 15-year-old truck, shopping at discount stores, while sitting on nearly $1 million in investments. The bank statement showed regular deposits over the past 20 years, small amounts that had grown through compound interest and careful investing. Every paycheck, Dad had put away a little more than anyone knew about. He'd been preparing for something, maybe a long illness, maybe just peace of mind. But he'd hidden it from everyone, including me, until now. I was still sitting in the garage when Sarah came home. She looked flushed, excited. How did it go at the bank? I asked. Great, she said quickly. They're processing the transfers now. Should be complete by tomorrow. Something in her voice made me pause. Which bank did you go to? First National, she said, where your dad had his accounts. I nodded, but something felt off. Sarah was nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap, avoiding eye contact. She was hiding something. I'm going to shower, she said. This whole day has been so emotional. While she was upstairs, I called First National. The automated system let me check account balances, using Dad's Social Security number and account information from his statements. All the accounts were empty, every single one. I hung up and called the bank directly, spoke to a representative. I'm calling about Robert Brennan's accounts, I said. I'm his son, and I need to understand what happened today. Oh, yes, Mr. Brennan, the woman said. Your wife came in this morning with the death certificate and will. She had power of attorney documentation, so we were able to process the transfers immediately. Power of attorney? Yes, signed by her father last month. She had all the proper documentation to move the funds. I thanked her and hung up, my hand shaking. Sarah had power of attorney? Dad had never mentioned that. In fact, he'd always been careful about his financial privacy. I went to Dad's desk and searched through his files again. In the back of a drawer, I found a folder labeled Legal Documents. Inside was a photocopy of a power of attorney document, dated just 3 weeks before Dad died. The signature didn't look right. I'd seen Dad's signature thousands of times over the years. This one was close, but the R in Robert was wrong, and the way to be connected to the R in Brennan wasn't quite right either. Sarah had forged it. I heard the shower stop upstairs. Sarah would be down soon, probably suggesting we celebrate having the inheritance sorted out so quickly. I needed to think, and I needed to think fast. I remembered what Dad had said about the workshop. The real money is where she thinks it is. Had he known? Had he somehow suspected that Sarah would try something like this? I locked the safe and replaced the floorboard, then went back into the house. Sarah was in the kitchen, making coffee, humming to herself. She seemed happier than I'd seen her in months. Everything okay? She asked. You look pale. Just tired, I said. It's been a long day. Well, we can relax now, she said, pouring 2 cups of coffee. The inheritance stuff is all taken care of. We can start planning what to do with the money. What do you think we should do? I asked carefully. She smiled. I've been thinking about that. We could pay off the mortgage. Maybe take a trip. I've always wanted to see Europe. That sounds nice, I said. Where would you want to go? Maybe Greece, she said. I've been reading about these spiritual retreats there. Yoga, meditation, finding yourself. It might be good for us after everything we've been through. Spiritual retreats. I thought about the phone call at the funeral, about her smile. When would you want to go? I asked. Soon, she said. Maybe next month? I could take some time off work. I nodded, sipping my coffee, watching my wife plan a vacation funded by money she'd stolen from me. Money she thought was all there was. That night, after Sarah fell asleep, I went back to Dad's house. I needed to understand exactly what he'd left me, and I needed to figure out how to handle what Sarah had done. The safe contained more than just financial documents. There was a letter, addressed to me, dated just 2 weeks before Dad died. Michael, it read, If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you found what I really wanted to leave you. I've been watching Sarah closely over the past few months, and I'm worried about her behavior. She's been asking too many questions about my finances, and I've caught her going through my mail when she thought I wasn't looking. I hope I'm wrong about her. But if I'm not, I want to make sure you be protected. The accounts she knows about are real, but they're not everything. This is everything. The combination to change this safe is 1947, then your birthday, then 1947 again. Trust your instincts, son. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is just letting people hang themselves with their own rope. Love, Dad. I sat in the garage, holding the letter, feeling like Dad was still looking out for me even from beyond the grave. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known exactly what Sarah was planning to do. Over the next few days, I played along with Sarah's charade. I pretended to be grateful for her help with the inheritance, pretended to be excited about our future plans. Meanwhile, I was making plans of my own. I contacted a lawyer, not our usual family lawyer, but someone Sarah had never met. I showed him the forged power of attorney, the bank transfers, and Dad's letter. He was fascinated. "This is clearly fraud," he said. "Forgery, theft, possibly conspiracy if she had help. But the interesting thing is, she only stole from the accounts she knew about. She has no idea about the other assets. What should I do?" I asked. "Well," he said, "you could report her to the police right now. But if you want to see how deep this goes, if you want to understand whether she's working with someone else, you might want to wait and see what she does next." I thought about Dad's letter. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people hang themselves with their own rope. How long should I wait? "Not long," he said, "but maybe give her enough time to think she's gotten away with it. People get careless when they think they're safe." That evening, Sarah brought up the Greece trip again. She'd been researching retreats, she said, and had found the perfect place. A month-long spiritual journey on a secluded island, complete with yoga, meditation, and personal discovery. "It's expensive," she said, "but we can afford it now. It's $15,000 for both of us." Both of us. I asked. She hesitated. "Well, I was thinking I might go first. You know, to make sure it's something we both enjoy. It's been so stressful lately with your dad's illness and everything. I need some time to decompress." I nodded. "That makes sense. When would you go?" "Next week," she said, "if that's okay with you." Next week. She was moving fast. "Of course," I said. "You deserve some time to yourself." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "You're the best husband in the world." The next morning, while Sarah was at work, I went back to the lawyer's office. He'd done some research on the retreat Sarah had mentioned. "It's real," he said, "but it's not in Greece. It's in Costa Rica. And it's not a spiritual retreat." "What is it?" "It's a couple's resort," he said. "Very exclusive, very expensive, very romantic. The kind of place people go when they're having affairs." My stomach dropped. She's not going alone. Doesn't look like it. I had a private investigator do some digging. "Your wife has been in contact with someone named David Chun for the past 6 months. He's a financial advisor, recently divorced, lives in Seattle." David Chun. I'd never heard the name before. How did they meet? I asked. Online, apparently, through a financial planning forum. She was asking questions about inheritance law, tax implications of large transfers, things like that. The pieces started falling into place. Sarah hadn't just randomly decided to steal my inheritance. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd met someone, made plans, researched the legal angles, and then waited for the right opportunity. Dad's death had been that opportunity. "What do you want to do?" the lawyer asked. I thought about it. Sarah was planning to leave me anyway. The Costa Rica trip was probably just the beginning. She'd stolen my inheritance, forged legal documents, and was planning to start a new life with someone else. But she didn't know about the real money. She thought she'd gotten away with everything. but she'd only stolen a fraction of what Dad had actually left me. I want to let her go, I said. I want to see how far she'll take this. And then I want to take everything back, plus interest. The lawyer smiled. I like your style. Over the next week, I watched Sarah prepare for her trip. She bought new clothes, new luggage, spent hours on the phone with the retreat center making arrangements. She was careful to have these conversations when she thought I wasn't listening, but I heard enough to know she was talking to David, planning their romantic getaway. The night before she left, she was almost giddy with excitement. "I'm going to miss you," she said, but she was already mentally gone. "I'll miss you too," I replied, and I meant it. I would miss the Sarah I thought I'd married, the woman I'd loved for 15 years. But that woman was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. The next morning, I drove Sarah to the airport. She kissed me goodbye at the security checkpoint, told me she loved me, promised to call every day. I watched her disappear into the terminal, then drove home to wait. She called that evening, told me she'd arrived safely, that the retreat was beautiful, that she was already feeling more centered. She sounded happy, relaxed, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. I'm sure it had been. While Sarah was in Costa Rica, I was busy. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find: the forged power of attorney, bank records, phone records, emails. My lawyer helped me build a case that would hold up in court. But I also did something else. I contacted David Chun. I found his business website, his LinkedIn profile, his social media accounts. He was 42, recently divorced, owned a small financial planning firm in Seattle. He specialized in helping people manage sudden wealth, inheritances, lottery winnings, divorce settlements. Perfect. I created a fake email account and sent him a message, pretending to be someone who'd heard about his services and was interested in managing a large inheritance. I mentioned that I was dealing with a complex situation involving a recent death in the family and needed discreet advice. He responded within hours, eager to help. We arranged a phone consultation. During the call, I told him I'd recently inherited almost $1 million and was looking for someone to help me invest it wisely. I also mentioned that my situation was complicated by family dynamics and that I needed someone who understood the importance of confidentiality. He was very interested. "I actually have some experience with situations like yours," he said. "In fact, I'm currently helping someone with a very similar inheritance situation. Sometimes family members don't understand the opportunities that come with sudden wealth." I asked him to tell me more about his approach. "Well," he said, "the key is to move quickly while maintaining discretion. You want to transfer the assets to investment accounts as soon as possible, before other family members have a chance to complicate things. I can help you set up offshore accounts, structure investments to minimize taxes, even relocate if necessary." Offshore accounts. Relocation. This wasn't just about an affair. David was helping Sarah steal my inheritance and disappear with it. "That sounds exactly like what I need." I told him. "When can we meet?" "I'm actually out of the country right now," he said, "but I'll be back next week. Why don't you call me then, and we can set up a meeting?" After I hung up, I sat in my living room, staring at the phone. Sarah wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to disappear entirely. She was going to take my inheritance, flee to another country, and start a new life with David Chun. But she still didn't know about the real money. Sarah called me every day from Costa Rica, but the calls got shorter and less frequent as the week went on. She was having an amazing time, she said, really connecting with herself, learning to let go of negative energy. "I think I need to extend my stay," she said during our last conversation. "The retreat coordinator thinks I'm having a breakthrough, and she recommends I stay for the full month." "Whatever you think is best," I said. "I want you to get everything you need out of this experience." "You're so understanding," she said. "I love you so much." "I love you too," I said and hung up. That was the last time we spoke. The next day, I went to the police. I brought all the evidence I gathered. The forged documents, the bank records, the phone records, the email conversations with David Chun. I told him everything. Detective Morrison listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions. "This is a complex case," she said when I finished. "Wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The fact that it crosses state lines makes it federal. We'll need to coordinate with the FBI. How long will that take?" I asked. "Not long," she said. "But the tricky part is that your wife is currently out of the country. We'll need to work with international authorities to bring her back." "What about David Chun?" "We'll arrest him as soon as we have the warrants. But we need to be careful. If he realizes what's happening, he might warn your wife, and she might not come back." "What do you need me to do?" "Nothing," she said. "Go home, act normal, and let us handle this." I went home, but I didn't act normal. Instead, I did something I've been planning for weeks. I went to Dad's house and opened the safe one more time. Using the new combination Dad had mentioned in his letter, I changed the safe's access code to something only I would know. Then I gathered all the real financial documents, the stock certificates, the bond records, the bank statements showing $830,000 in assets Sarah had never known about. I took everything to a new bank, one Sarah had never heard of, and opened an account in my name only. I transferred all of Dad's hidden assets into secure investments, set up proper estate planning, and made sure everything was protected. Then I waited. 3 days later, Detective Morrison called. "We've arrested David Chun," she said. "He's being charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and several other felonies. He's looking at 10 to 15 years. "What about Sarah?" "That's where it gets interesting," she said. "When we arrested Chun, we found evidence that he's been running this scam for years. Your wife isn't his first victim. She's his accomplice. She's been helping him target widows and widowers, people dealing with recent inheritances. You're the fourth person they've done this to." I felt sick. She'd been doing this to other people for at least 2 years. She meets them through online forums, befriends them, gains their trust, then helps Chin steal their inheritances. They split the money and move on to the next target. "And me? You were just the latest mark," Morrison said. "But you were also the biggest one. Chun is already trying to make a deal. He's offered to testify against your wife in exchange for a reduced sentence. What happens now? Now we wait for your wife to come home." Sarah returned from Costa Rica 3 days later. I picked her up at the airport, playing the role of the devoted husband one last time. She looked tanned, relaxed, and happy. She hugged me tight at baggage claim, told me how much she'd missed me, how the retreat had changed her life. "I feel like a new person," she said in the car. "I've learned so much about myself, about what I want from life." "That's wonderful," I said. "I can't wait to hear all about it." We drove home, Sarah chattering about her experiences, her new insights, her plans for our future. She seemed genuinely excited about coming home, about starting this new chapter of our lives together. I almost felt sorry for her. That evening, as we sat on the couch looking through her photos from the trip, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, getting up. Detective Morrison was at the door, along with 2 FBI agents. "Michael Brennan?" one of the agents said. "We have a warrant for Sarah Brennan's arrest." Sarah heard them from the living room. When I turned around, she was standing in the doorway, her face pale, her hands shaking. "Sarah Brennan," Detective Morrison said, "you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and theft. You have the right to remain silent." Sarah looked at me, confusion and fear in her eyes. "Michael, what's happening? What are they talking about?" I didn't answer. I just watched as they handcuffed her and led her away. The trial took 8 months. Sarah maintained her innocence at first, claiming she'd been manipulated by David Chun, that she'd never meant to hurt anyone. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the phone records, the financial transfers. Everything pointed to a calculated, long-term fraud scheme. David Chin testified against her as part of his plea agreement. He described how they'd met in an online forum, how she'd approached her with the idea of targeting people dealing with inheritances, how they'd refined their methods over time. Sarah was the mastermind, he testified. She was the one who figured out how to forge documents, how to gain victims' trust, how to make the thefts look legitimate. I was just a money manager. Sarah's defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim of manipulation, but the jury didn't buy it. They saw her for what she was, a calculating predator who had targeted vulnerable people during the worst moments of their lives. She was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. After the sentencing, I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing free air for the first time in months. The nightmare was over. Sarah was gone, David Chun was in prison, and the other victims of their scheme were finally getting their money back. But I wasn't done yet. I used part of Dad's real inheritance to hire a private investigator. I wanted to understand exactly what Sarah had done, how long she'd been planning this, how many other lives she destroyed. What he found was worse than I'd imagined. Sarah had been running variations of the scam for almost 5 years, even before she met David Chun. She'd targeted 3 elderly widows, convincing them she was their friend, gaining access to their finances, then systematically stealing from them. 2 of the women had died penniless, alone, believing they'd been abandoned by their families when the money ran out. The 3rd woman, Eleanor Martinez, was still alive. She was 78 years old, living in a nursing home in Phoenix, surviving on Medicaid because Sarah had stolen her life savings of $150,000. I flew to Phoenix to meet her. Eleanor was small, frail, but her eyes were sharp. She remembered Sarah clearly. She was so sweet, Eleanor said. She called me every day after my husband died, brought me groceries, helped me with my bills. I trusted her completely. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry for what she did to you." Eleanor patted my hand. "It's not your fault, dear. You were her victim, too." Before I left Phoenix, I did something that felt right. I used part of Dad's inheritance to pay for Eleanor's care for the rest of her life. I set up a trust fund that would cover her nursing home costs, her medical bills, anything she needed. It was what Dad would have wanted. He'd always said that money was only as good as what you did with it. I did the same for the families of the other 2 women Sarah had victimized. I couldn't bring them back, but I could make sure their children and grandchildren were taken care of. Today, 3 years later, I live in a small house on the Oregon coast. I kept Dad's house as a rental property, but I couldn't live there anymore. Too many memories, too much betrayal in those walls. I never remarried. I'm not sure I ever will. But I'm not bitter. Not anymore. I learned something important from this whole experience. Sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who protect you even after they're gone. Dad knew what Sarah was planning before I did. He set up a system to protect me, to make sure I'd be okay no matter what she tried to do. His love reached across the grave to save me from her greed. Sarah will be eligible for parole in 8 years. Sometimes I wonder what she'll do when she gets out, whether she'll try to contact me, whether she'll have learned anything from her time in prison. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. Instead, I think about Dad working his garage, carefully planning for a future he wouldn't live to see. I think about the workshop, the hidden safe, the letter that saved my life. I think about the difference between the money Sarah stole and the money she never knew existed. She took $340,000 and thought she'd won everything. She never knew about the $830,000 that Dad really left me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's just letting greedy people think they've won while you walk away with everything that actually matters. Dad taught me that even from beyond the grave. And that's worth more than any amount of money.